Welcome to my Switching, Routing, and Wireless Essentials course. This should be the CCNA version 7 curriculum. This is the second of 3 courses. So I just said let's talk about how to configure VLANs. So that's what we're going to do. Alright, so first things are Cisco Catalyst switches, typically a 2960, and 3650s will support over 4,000 VLANs. Those are more of the modern day switches. Realistically, these are still like 10 plus years old, but those are what we're going to be using in this class. If we're talking a normal range VLAN, they're going to be typically under 1,000. If we're talking extended, they're going to be over 1,000. Keep in mind, I understand it's 1,005, but 1,002, 3, 4, and 5 are predefined VLANs that we don't really use anymore. Those are going to be things for like an FDDI, token ring, and things of that nature that are outside the scope of what we deal with, and realistically are old dying technologies. So the normal VLANs we use for small and medium businesses because again they don't need 1,000 VLANs. Again, 1002 through 1005 are reserved for legacy VLANs. They're auto-created. You cannot delete them. You cannot modify them. VLAN data is actually stored in a VLAN.dat file on the switch's memory. So in Flash, if you want to delete all of the VLAN data, you could delete the VLAN.dat and that would delete all the VLAN information. So we also have the ability to share VLAN information between switches. That is what VTP does. VTP allows for a server to actually push its configuration to multiple switches. Though VTP is no longer really tested on the Cisco exam, so we don't cover that in depth like we should. Larger VLANs are used by larger businesses and service providers. Again, they have a fewer VLAN feature sets, and they do require VTP configuration to actually manage. So most of what we're going to be doing in this class will be focused on our normal range VLANs because that's within the CCNA. So how do we configure a VLAN? Go to our global configuration, type VLAN space, give it a number, that creates the VLAN. We could also name our VLAN by, once we are navigated to our VLAN subcommand. So let's say we want to configure VLAN 10. We would go configure terminal, get to our switch configuration, our global config, would type VLAN 20, or we're doing VLAN 10, so VLAN 10, that would get us to a sub interface for our VLANs. We would issue a name and give our VLANs a name. That set up our VLAN. We would exit out and our VLAN has been created. For example, we want to do VLAN 20. We would go from our exec mode to our global configuration mode. From our global configuration mode, type VLAN 20. That creates VLAN 20. Hit enter. That brings us to our sub interface for our VLAN. We would do the name of our VLAN. Hit enter. That now creates VLAN 20 and it's named student. So if we want to then use that VLAN, we have to assign that VLAN to an interface. Again, a VLAN that's not assigned to an interface does us no good. So we would have to go to the appropriate interface. Let's say we are configuring interface 1 to use VLAN 10. So here we would go to interface gig 01. We would tell it switch port mode access. That says that we're going to be in the mode for access. Access will be the operational mode. Then we would go switch port access VLAN and say what VLAN we're going to be operating in. This will then tag that port's traffic with this VLAN. So again, if we're doing VLAN 10, for example, it would be switch port access VLAN 10. That will tell the switch to tag that port as VLAN 10. So let's see that as an example. Here we want to tag that PC as VLAN 20. So go to our global configuration mode, navigate to this port, set that port to an access port, and then set that port to be tagged to VLAN 20. So let's talk about now adding a voice VLAN in the mix. So again, we have switch 3 with a data port. We configured that data port to use VLAN 20, but now we want to add a voice device on that same connection. What we would end up doing is we would create a VLAN. Here we're calling VLAN 150. We're calling it voice. So notice here we still do the same type of mode access. So switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 20. That will give us our data. You can set QoS. You don't have to do the MLS, QoS, trust, QoS, but here we are. Again, this is outside the scope of this course, so I don't know why they put the command there, but they decided to. Lastly, we'll be going switch port voice VLAN 150. It's not an access VLAN, it is a voice VLAN, so it will be tagged slightly different. If the VLAN is not created, it will then create it. So here we did 20 and 150, those are created. Let's say we fat finger this and we did 30. If VLAN 30 doesn't exist, you should get this message. VLAN does not exist, then it will create VLAN 30. So you don't always have to create the VLAN numbers first, but it's a better idea to do that so that you can create the VLAN and then name them appropriately. Here, VLAN 30 will be nameless. So how do we verify it? We could do a show VLAN. We could do a show VLAN summary that will show how many VLANs we have. We could do a show interface, and we could also then say VLAN 20, and that will let us know how VLAN 20 is functioning. We could do a show IP brief. So it just kind of depends on what we're looking for. We could look at name as well. So show VLAN. We could do brief ID or name or summary. Realistically, brief, ID, and summary are the big ones that I use, and summary and brief are the two that we use the most. And we will have labs where you're going to be going through this show commands just in case. So how do we change membership? So again, that switch port access VLAN, that is how we change the VLAN membership. That is saying we're going to take this out of our default, our native VLAN, and we're going to move it to a separate VLAN. So there are a number of ways to do the VLANs. You could do a switch port access VLAN 20, for example, and that will change it to VLAN 20. If you want to put it back into the default native one, then we could do a no switch port access VLAN, and this will be to put it back into VLAN 1. If you just delete the VLAN, then the switch will not associate that port back to the default VLAN. So again, that's important because that happens more than people realize. And how do we verify? We could do a show VLAN brief or a show interface and look at the appropriate interface. How do we delete VLANs? Again, we would delete in Flash the VLAN.dat. Or you could do just delete VLAN.dat, and that also works. You have to reload the switch because the VLAN.dat is stored in memory. So, by deleting the VLAN.dat, the running memory is not affected, hence the reload. Delete VLANs that don't have IDs or have no ports. You could do a no VLAN and give it a ID. So if we want to delete VLAN 31 because we accidentally fat fingered 30, you could do a no VLAN 31 and that would delete VLAN 31 because there are no ports associated with it. Alright, nice thing is we have a packet tracer that requires you to do the configuring. Questions, concerns, please reach out. Thank you.